Hey guys, today we're going to be painting a nice sunset scene like so. The materials you will need are watercolors, watercolor brushes, and 140-pound paper and masking tape. To begin with, we're going to start wetting our paper completely from top to bottom with a generous amount of water. Make sure you're not causing any puddles in your water or on your paper, and making sure it's just a nice even wash over the painting. To create the sky effect, we're going to take two colors, orange and blue, and we're going to start intense at the bottom and the top of the page and gradually fade them into each other as they meet the middle of the page in a focal point. Like so. It is important to remember to keep working while your paper is wet. It'll make blending colors easier and just general working and building up tones a little easier as well. For the clouds, we're going to take a rolled up paper towel, and while the paper is still wet, we're going to dab over random spots on there to pull out the shapes of our clouds. Steal your wife's hair blower to dry the paper. For the cloud details, we're going to take a little bit of purple and we're going to start painting random shapes on the bottom of the cloud shapes that we used our paper towel to pull shapes out of. What the freak am I saying? But in all honesty, it is that simple. That is going to be the base color for our cloud shadows. You can build up these tones with a more intense purple, and that can help to give your clouds more dimension. For the horizon, I'm going to take a little bit of gray and start to paint in shapes that I like to create some mountains. They can be any shape you want, doesn't really matter. I don't care, you do you. Now comes the fun part. We're going to start building up our tones. So I took a little bit of pink and started adding it to my water. And that kind of gives it that nice sunsetty glowy look. And we're going to mimic that in the sky as well. Don't be too dark with these colors as we're going to still build them up over time. So don't go intense like I just did, or else you will regret it. Leave little spaces of white above your clouds so that you can bring in some detail later as well. It is super important to remember that any wet part of your canvas will allow colors to bleed into it. So always make sure your layer that you are working on is dry, or else you're going to get muddy, dirty colors. For the mountains and clouds, I'm bringing more purple in and going over my existing layers to build up tonal quality. And I'm also adding more little clouds in the distance in my sunset. To give that sky some razzle dazzle, bring some more blue in and make it a little bit more intense. Painting around your clouds, try not to let the colors bleed into those. You can also add a little hint of blue to your water to start giving the illusion of waves and bringing more pinks and stuff like that in as well. I'm also still building up tones this entire time, so I keep adding purple to the bottom of my clouds, and that just helps add tonal contrast to them and make them pop. One important tip is to keep your sun, that is the middle of my focal point, as bright as possible. So that means don't paint over it with any other colors. Try to leave that as bright as possible. And same for the reflection in the water. You want to leave that as bright as possible as well, and that gives it that nice reflective quality in the water. And we are going to dry our painting with a blow dryer that we did not steal from our wife. Now I'm going to lightly sketch the shapes of the boats that I would like in my piece. These can be very loosely drawn. They don't have to be super detailed. I just did very rough outlines. We're going to come back later and add a little bit more detail in. But just have fun with the shapes. Okay, I'm going to admit I kind of screwed up. I used a very thin brush for this. It's better if you use a thicker brush with a finer point, because you can get very sharp lines. I did a stupid and I used a smaller brush because I thought the point would work, but see how fat those lines are? Use a bigger brush with a finer point and you'll get better results. But basically all I'm doing is just starting to get a rough shape with some dark black, very little water on the brush, and I'm starting to refine these outlines of these boats and starting to add in little details. But this can be very flowy and very impressionistic. Same for the ones in the background. I didn't even look at a reference, I don't think. I just kind of went for it and thought, well, if it looks like a boat, we'll call it good. I am using a very, very wet brush for the reflections in the water. I'm kind of laying a puddle down and then painting black over that and letting it spread itself into the water very lightly. I'm trying not to go too dark on that. Same for the masts. Don't keep very straight lines. Make them squiggly, make them broken up. It looks better, trust me. All right, guys, from here on out, it is basically, just building up tones. I'm kind of bringing some more gray into those clouds, definitely more black into the boats, really building up the contrast of this piece, more purple and pinks, and making little hills that look like waves. That's a good way to remember in my last tutorial. We talked about how waves can resemble little mountains. That's a great way to achieve a very easy wave. But the rest of the piece is just building up tones. Try not to go too crazy on it because you don't want to ruin your painting at the very end. But that about wraps it up, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments how I'm doing. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.